The Strait of Hormuz, the most dangerous and most important shipping route on Earth. Have you ever wondered how one narrow strip of water can control the price of gas, affect world wars, and keep the most powerful nations on edge every single day? Today, we're diving into the story of the Strait of Hormuz, the most dangerous and most important shipping route on Earth. This tiny passage between Iran and Oman carries a huge portion of the world's oil, and if it ever closes, the entire global economy could feel the shock within hours. But this is not just a story about oil, this is a story about mountains rising, continents colliding, and how geography created one of the most powerful choke points in human history. In this video, we'll uncover how the land itself shaped the conflict, why the strait stayed so narrow for millions of years, and why countries like the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Iran watch this waterway every second of every day. From ancient tectonic forces to modern warships, the Strait of Hormuz proves that the past still controls the present. Stay with us, because once you understand this story, you will never look at the world map the same way again. Welcome to African Stories by Frank Asada. Where are you watching from? Before we dive into the Strait of Hormuz story, we encourage you to rate the video and tell us in the comments below where you are watching from. Like, share and subscribe so that you will be the first to be notified of our next video coming up. Why the Strait of Hormuz is important today. The Strait of Hormuz is always in the news because it is one of the most important shipping routes in the world and a major center of political tension. This narrow waterway connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, allowing oil and natural gas from Middle Eastern countries to reach global markets. A large percentage of the world's petroleum exports passes through this single channel every day. Because of this, even small conflicts in the region can affect fuel prices, shipping costs, and international trade. When there are threats, military exercises, or disputes involving nearby countries, the world pays close attention because any disruption could slow or stop the flow of energy supplies. This constant economic importance keeps the strait in global headlines. Another reason the strait is often in the news is because of the political tensions involving Iran, the United States, and nearby Gulf nations such as Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Iran has coastline along the northern side of the strait, which gives it a strong geographic advantage. Because the channel is narrow, Iran has often stated that it could block or restrict shipping if it felt threatened. In response, the United States and its allies keep naval forces in the region to ensure that ships can pass safely. This balance of power makes the strait a frequent focus of military patrols, warnings, and diplomatic disputes. Whenever relations become tense, news reports often mention the Strait of Hormuz because it is one of the first places where conflict could affect the world economy. Control of the strait is complicated because no single country fully owns it, but several nations share responsibility for the surrounding waters. Iran controls much of the northern coast, while Oman controls part of the southern side. International law allows ships from all countries to pass through the strait, since it is considered an important global transit route. However, because the passage is so narrow, the countries closest to it have the most influence over what happens there. This situation creates constant tension. The waterway must remain open for global trade, yet the nearby nations also want to protect their security. As a result, the Strait of Hormuz stays in the news not only because of geography, but because it sits at the center of energy, politics, and military power in the modern world. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most strategically important waterways in the world today because it serves as the main passage for oil and natural gas exported from the Persian Gulf to global markets. Countries such as Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates depend on this narrow sea route to ship energy resources to Asia, Europe, and North America. Because so much of the world's oil passes through this single corridor, any disruption in the strait can affect global fuel prices within hours. Naval forces from several countries patrol the region to keep shipping lanes open, making the area a constant focus of international security concerns. Its importance is not only economic but also political, since tensions in the region often involve control of this passage. The strait is also important because it connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, which then leads to the Arabian Sea and the wider Indian Ocean. Without this connection, the oil-producing nations around the Persian Gulf would have no direct sea route to international waters. Because the surrounding land is mostly desert and mountains, pipelines alone cannot replace the massive amount of oil transported by ships. Tankers must pass through a relatively narrow channel, which makes navigation tightly controlled. This geographic bottleneck means that even small military conflicts, accidents, or blockades could slow or stop a large portion of the world's energy supply, giving the strait enormous influence over global trade. Another reason the Strait of Hormuz remains important today is that its narrow shape makes it easy to monitor but difficult to bypass. The shipping lanes are only a few kilometers wide in each direction, so vessels must travel in clearly defined routes. This makes the strait both a vital highway and a potential choke point. Because of this, countries in the region invest heavily in coastal defenses, radar systems, and naval patrols. The location also places it near major geopolitical rivals, increasing the risk that tensions could affect international shipping. As global energy demand continues, the strait will likely remain one of the most closely watched waterways on Earth, showing how geography formed millions of years ago still shapes modern politics and economics. How the strait stayed narrow. The Strait of Hormuz stayed narrow because of the way the Earth's tectonic plates moved in this region over millions of years. The Arabian Plate slowly pushed northward toward the Eurasian Plate, causing the land on the Iranian side to rise into mountains while the Arabian side remained more stable and flat. When the Persian Gulf basin filled with seawater, the rising land blocked most of the possible openings to the ocean. Only one small gap remained where water could flow out toward the Gulf of Oman. Because the mountains kept rising while the opposite side did not sink much, the opening never became very wide. Instead of forming a large ocean passage, the region kept a tight channel between the two landmasses. This balance between uplift on one side and stability on the other is the main reason the strait is still narrow today. The mountains formed on the Iranian side. The mountains on the Iranian side of the Strait of Hormuz formed because the Arabian tectonic plate has been slowly colliding with the Eurasian plate for tens of millions of years. This collision created the Zagros Mountains, a long chain that stretches across much of southern Iran. When two plates push together, the Earth's crust does not simply slide past each other. Instead, the rocks bend, fold, and rise upward, forming mountain ranges. In this region, the pressure was strong enough to lift thick layers of sediment into tall ridges that run parallel to the Persian Gulf. As these mountains rose, they acted like a wall along the northern edge of the Gulf. Rivers and seawater could not easily cut through the hard rock, so the coastline remained steep and confined. The uplift also reduced the number of places where the Gulf could connect to the open ocean. Over time, most possible outlets were blocked by rising land, leaving only the area near modern-day Hormuz as a low point where water could still pass. Another reason the Iranian side became mountainous is that the collision is still happening today. The Arabian Plate continues to move north a few centimeters each year, slowly pushing the land upward. Because the movement is gradual, the mountains keep their shape and continue to limit the width of the strait. This ongoing tectonic pressure explains why the northern side of the Strait of Hormuz is rugged, steep, and narrow compared with the smoother coastline on the Arabian Peninsula side. This is how the Arabian Peninsula stayed relatively stable. While the Iranian side was being pushed upward into mountains, the Arabian Peninsula remained much more stable. The Arabian Plate moved northward as a solid block, but most of the deformation happened where it collided with Eurasia, not in the center of the plate. Because of this, the land along the southern side of the Persian Gulf stayed relatively flat and did not rise into large mountain ranges. This stability meant that the coastline did not block the water, but it also did not sink enough to create a wide opening. The deserts and low hills of Oman and the eastern Arabian Peninsula formed on older, more stable rock that was not folding as much as the rocks in Iran. As a result, the Gulf remained bordered by a flat southern shore and a mountainous northern shore. This uneven movement helped keep the outlet to the ocean small, since only one side was rising while the other stayed mostly unchanged. Why only one low gap remained for water flow? As the mountains rose in Iran and the Arabian side stayed stable, most of the edges of the Persian Gulf became closed off by land. However, one low area near the present-day Strait of Hormuz remained below sea level. When ocean water flooded the basin that became the Persian Gulf, it could escape only through this single gap. Because the surrounding land stayed high, the opening never widened into a large ocean channel. Instead, the water continued to flow through the same narrow passage. This is why today the strait is still a tight connection between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. What is the width of the Strait of Hormuz today? The Strait of Hormuz is about 33 kilometers, 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, but the safe shipping lanes are much smaller, only a few kilometers wide in each direction. This narrow width is the direct result of the tectonic forces, mountain building, and stable land that shaped the region millions of years ago. Thank you for watching. Please leave comments. Like, share and subscribe so that you will be the first to be notified of our next video coming up.